It took two of our best friends' lives, so.
I never really thought I'd believe this or say this, but at this moment, I honest to God believe I'm dead.
No one in the area at the time is likely to forget that day in 1980. Those closest to the eruption took photographs and then raced for their lives down the mountain. They are lucky to be alive to tell the stories about the day Mount St. Helens erupted. Mount St. Helens is just a youngster in geological terms, about 40,000 years old, and like all teenagers, when it grows, it does so violently at times. Located in southwestern Washington, Mount St. Helens is part of the Cascade Mountain Range. The Cascades run from northern California through Oregon and Washington and into Canada. The Cascades are part of the so-called Ring of Fire, a series of volcanoes and earthquake zones that circle the Pacific Ocean. Mount St. Helens has long been the most active volcano in North America. It had a fierce reputation even before the Europeans arrived. Native Americans called it Fire Mountain and stayed well away. There were few people to see the last major eruption in 1857. Since then, the volcano had slept. In March, 2 months before it erupted this time, the United States Geological Survey recorded a moderate earthquake deep in the earth directly below Mount St. Helens. In the next few days, the United States Geological Survey recorded several hundred more such earthquakes. The volcano was waking up.
When we first heard about the earthquake swarm under the volcano, frankly, we weren't surprised. I mean, we thought, wow, this is too good to be true, but we were not surprised that it woke up.
It lasted about 2 minutes, and it occurred about 3 minutes ago.
A week later, the pressures building inside the cone from the seismic activity exploded. The summit was obscured from the ground by a cloud cover, but news crews flew above the clouds to report what they saw.
Apparently there has been an eruption on the west side of the mountain. I don't know what the extent is. There's about a third of the mountain that's covered with clouds, and we just don't know what has happened at this time.
Ash and vapor shot 6,000 feet into the atmosphere, and a crater 250 feet wide opened up in the summit. It was the first significant volcanic eruption in America since California's Lassen Peak erupted in 1914. As the news spread, the curious and the interested headed towards the mountain, instead of going the other way.
I was 30 years old, didn't have any dependents, never been married. It's like, a volcano? I'm not going to go play on it? I mean, it's preposterous. I mean, there's no... In the words of this very difficult person who once said to me, every right-thinking person wants to go there. And I clearly was right-thinking.
Washington State suddenly had a dangerous mountain.
He's staying, huh?
Harry's gonna stay. It's his choice.
The media created another celebrity, Harry Truman, a lodge owner on Spirit Lake just at the foot of the mountain.
No, I'm not going to leave. You're damn right I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay here.
He had lived there for 50 years, and he was damned if he was going to leave.
If I left, it'd kill me. If I left this place and lost my home, I'd die in a week. So I'm like that old captain. By God, I'm going down the ship. I said, if this damn thing takes this mountain, I'm going along with it. I'd rather be dead.
By the end of March, 93 small eruptions expelled steam and ash from the newly opened crater. The news was music to the ears of volcano watchers such as Dan Miller and the newly assembled team of Geological Survey scientists.
We all worked together. Occasionally, late in the evening, when we all came back into town to Vancouver, we'd go out to a restaurant together. We stayed in the same motel or motels together. And we talked incessantly about what was happening, what we thought it meant in terms of the future, what kind of an eruption would occur, how big would it be, when was it going to take place. You know, it was an exciting time, a challenging time, and one that sort of brought us all together. And so we had a lot of camaraderie. We shared the same helicopter to go out to the volcano and land on the summit area. And we shared our data every morning at 7 a.m. at an early morning meeting to try to figure out what was going on.
On the 3rd of April, monitoring equipment recorded harmonic tremors under Mount St. Helens. That told geologists that magma, molten rock charged with gas, was on the move. The state governor, Dixie Lee Ray, declared a state of emergency. People living near Mount St. Helens were advised to evacuate the area.
You're gonna have to go, and the faster the better. One time, one thing, you gotta go.
As the constant small eruptions continued from the summit, it was the northern flank of the mountain that caught the attention of the geologists. Their photographs show Mount St. Helens was growing. Magma forced its way up through the mountain, causing the surface to swell like a blister. They named it the bulge.
What happened at Mount St. Helens is essentially during the nearly 2 months from March 20th until May 18, molten rock or magma moved up into the volcano and actually began to inflate or to grow in size right inside the cone of Mount St. Helens. We call it a cryptodome or a hidden dome. And there was good evidence that this molten body of magma was essentially filling up the inside of Mount St. Helens. And it caused the north side of the volcano to break loose and to begin to move slowly at about 6 feet a day, actually, toward the north.
By May the 12th, parts of the bulge at the top were 450 feet higher than they had been only 2 months earlier. The geologists accepted then that the problem was not going to go away.
We realized, hey, this is not going away. In fact, the intensity of some aspects of the changes under the volcano was increasing with time. We were excited about that on the one hand, and on the other hand, we realized that Mount St. Helens, when it erupts, it is a very devastating kind of volcano.
While the bulge was growing, other volcanic activity slowed down. The blasts of steam and ash stopped by May 16th. But the earthquake activity underneath showed no sign of stopping. Scientists recorded 10,000 tremors, all of them concentrated about 1.5 miles beneath the bulge on the north face of Mount St. Helens. The mountain looked quieter, but the danger was greater. The authorities stepped up their efforts to stop people from getting too close to the mountain.
Sky Sports and Sky Sports HD.
May the 18th was a Sunday. So, the 330 loggers who work on Mount St. Helens were off for the day. Most of the sightseers had gone home long since because the mountain had quietened down. But there were still some people on or near the mountain. Ty and Mariana Kearney were on volcano watch, volunteer ham radio operators with the Washington State Office of Emergency Management. They were stationed only 8 miles west of Mount St. Helens. In the air, in a chartered airplane, geologists Keith and Dorothy Stoffel gathered information. Keith had paid for the flight as a birthday present for Dorothy. "5 miles due north of the bulge, geologist David Johnston kept an eye on his equipment and radioed his colleagues in Vancouver that the mountain was quiet. As Robert Rogers drove out of the area, he stopped to talk to the Kearneys. At 8:32 a.m., an earthquake directly beneath the bulge rocked the mountain.
Ty felt it and reported it to Olympia right away. And he said the whole van shook.
We were on the northwest side of the crater, about 500 feet directly above the north side, when all of a sudden we saw the glacier that was perched on the south crater wall caving in. And we got excited. We thought, oh, gee, this is exciting, a little activity.
Just like, you know, standing on a kitchen table and a big guy just sort of shake the rim of the table. It wasn't a big deal, but everybody felt it.
While no moving pictures exist of the moment of eruption, we can animate it from evidence of the various still photos snapped at the critical moment. The earthquake shook loose the unstable bulge on the north side of the mountain. Mount St. Helens collapsed in on itself, and within seconds, an avalanche of earth, rock, and debris began to tear down the mountainside.
And I'll never forget that arm stretched out and he's saying, "Look, there it goes. The whole north side is sliding away."
What was strange was that the whole north side was moving and the south side was stationary. It was as though you had sliced the volcano in half. We watched the north half of the volcano falling away beneath our feet.
The avalanche reached speeds of 180 miles an hour on its journey northwards, dumping material into Spirit Lake and west into a fork of the Toutle River. But that was just the beginning. Within seconds of the landslide, Mount St. Helens erupted in an explosion 700 times greater than Hiroshima. From 8 miles away, Robert Rogers managed to take these 6 photographs until his camera jammed. Ty Kearney, standing just a few feet from Rogers, took these photos. From Rogers and Kearney's photos, we see how the mountain blew not upwards as expected, but outwards.
This plume has come out of the summit, and then this plume came out of the side. And the vertical plume was not prominent at all. It was the lateral plume. And I said, wow, that is going right for Seattle.
The north side blew out with such force that it took the top 1,300 feet of the mountain with it. Within seconds, the blast overtook the landslide.
I looked up at the mountain as soon as they said earthquake, and it had started. And it was the beginning of the lateral blast, and I feel very privileged to have seen the very start of it.
Clearly, it had happened. And it was bigger than I could ever have anticipated. I mean, it was gigantic. I saw a mountain open up and then fill half of the horizon with black ash in seconds, minutes. Wow.
In the air, Keith and Dorothy Stoffel and their pilot Bruce Judson were right over the eruption. Keith had a camera.
We had just cleared the crater. The upper component of the blast exploded out of the top of the crater. The blast, as it developed, was huge. It blew out the north side of the volcano. The entire field of view of our airplane. You could see the blast in the background. Bruce did an amazing maneuver to save our lives.
Traveling at about 600 miles an hour, the blast snapped huge 100-year-old trees, roaring over nearby hills, destroying everything in its path. As the mountain erupted, the geologist David Johnston watched the landslide coming straight at him. He had just enough time to radio 5 words to his colleagues in Vancouver. He said, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it."
I had two very strong emotions on the morning of May 18. On the one hand, I was really thrilled that this explosive volcano that I had been studying for 6 years and that my colleagues had been studying for much longer than that was actually in the midst of a huge, explosive and spectacular eruption. I mean, as a scientist, that's pretty exciting. On the other hand, I very quickly realized that something terrible had probably happened to Dave Johnston.
David Johnston's body was never found. As the eruption continued, it fanned out to the north, sending a column of ash into the atmosphere. It was time for the Kearneys and Robert Rogers to get out of the way.
Ty Kearney sounds the alert on the radio. It's about the time my winder, my camera jams, and he jumps out, click, click, click. I think he had only that card table and maybe a wash basin in the side of the van, slammed the door. Marianne jumps in, and I'm in the lead.
It seemed like my whole world had fallen apart because all you could see out the van windows was gray ash cloud, and then we got down into a twilight zone. It was half dusk, sort of, and there was lightning flashing all over that cloud. It was just terribly frightening. And that's when I got scared, because then I thought, I wonder if we're really going to get out of here.
The only escape route led initially towards the volcano, over winding, rough logging roads, towards the swirling smoke and dust and fury.
We were going toward the mountain. That's the only way we could go. There was no other way to go. So we drove 1.25 miles toward the mountain, and then we made a sharp turn to the south, to the right. And he thought if the blast cloud had reached the trees, they would be down, and our way out would be blocked.
Ahead of the Kearneys, Robert Rogers and Francesco Valenzuela were also racing down the mountain. Rogers still gets excited when he talks about it.
So there are 3 cars. We drive straight toward the volcano. There's this big Caterpillar tractor parked at the junction. Turn right, head down to the little town of Cougar. Well, I did that right. And then I took the wrong turn at a Y. And I was like, uh-oh. Throw the steering wheel and plow through this big mud pile and go in the right direction. Well, Francisco's right on my tail, and he followed me, and he doesn't get out of the mud. Everything he owns is in that car. There's this volcano blowing up in front of us, and we can't see it because we're behind a hill. So he bails out of his car, jumps into my car. I look up, and there goes Ty. He hadn't taken the wrong turn. He knew the way out, and he was gone.
While her husband was at the wheel trying to outrun the volcano, Mariana Kearney was on the ham radio in the back of the van.
I had the radio in the back end. Yes, I was on my knees, and I was monitoring it because people were on. The emergency net was in action, you know. And then we just started this wild ride out of there. The static on that radio was terrific. And somebody, this man had we'd had a potluck the night before on the 17th, and he'd been up there. And he, of course, was a ham operator too, and he called me and said, "Which way are you going out?" And I screamed, "South." Of course, we were going west at first, but then we turned south. And I thought I had to scream because the static was so terrific. And then I made some transmissions on the way down when people called me. You know, there were not many, but that's what I was doing. On the way down I was monitoring that radio, but meanwhile, the gray ash cloud just looked like it was engulfing us.
Already engulfed was a news cameraman, David Crockett. He kept his camera rolling as he recorded what he thought could be his last words.
Oh, dear God. My God, this is hell. I just can't describe it. It's pitch black. Just pitch black. This is hell on earth I'm walking through. Oh, God. Just one step at a time. If I can just keep walking. God, if I could only... There's more air to breathe. Well, it's been about 10 minutes. It's now totally pitch black. I can't see to keep on walking. I guess I'm just gonna have to sit down here and wait it out. God, I pray to God that's all I'm doing is sitting here waiting it out. God. Oh, dear God. It's very, very hard to breathe in this. I can't see a thing. If only I could keep walking, you know, only if I could do something. Only I could do something, you know. I was just sitting here.
A mixture of groundwater, melting snow and glacial ice, soil and volcanic debris rushed down the mountain at 90 miles an hour. As the Kearneys headed on to safety, Rogers and Valenzuela decided to stop for one more look.
We could see the mountain again, and we couldn't hear each other. We jumped out of my car. We're like inches apart. Our clothing is snapping, blowing in the breeze, crackle, crack, 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 like a sail that's broken. There's this tornado of air flowing into the volcano to feed that updraft. And we're shouting in each other's ears to be heard. And looking at this amazing thing, there's like this black, roiling cauliflower cloud is just like filling the sky. It's cold. This amazing noise. The volcano sounds like a freight train with 10,000 square wheels rumbling by at 100 miles an hour. It's really loud. There's purple lightning right around the ash plume, all the way around the volcano. It's just lightning, just like sitting on the ground, just constantly. And they're a deep, rich purple because the light is being filtered through the dark ash cloud.
In their plane above the volcano, the Stoffels were not yet out of danger.
We were still quite close, and we watched this thing sort of roll over the south flank of the volcano, and I was quite scared, thinking, we're not out of this yet. After the blast sort of expended its energy, then it began to lift in this huge cloud. You think of a mushroom-shaped cloud. That is probably the closest thing to describe it. As it lifted, one of the most amazing phenomena was the lightning. There was so much lightning, we could see the entire interior of the crater. The interior of the crater was illuminated. The lightning bolts were tens of thousands of feet high. Keith said it was at that point that he was nervous, thinking that the lightning might hit the plane.